this edition of Martha Monday. Now, my regular viewers will know that typically when I get in the kitchen to cook on Martha Monday, I'm usually sharing a recipe that's a family favorite that I've made a zillion times, and oftentimes it's so familiar that I don't even remember where I first got the recipe because it's been in the family for so many years. Well, today I am breaking from tradition. Today I am going to attempt to make something with you that I'm kind of making up. I sort of got online and I looked for some different recipes and I'm kind of combining them. So I'm really going off track here a little bit and trying to create my own. What are we going to make, you ask? Homemade granola. This girl loves granola and I've always wanted to make my own, but I just couldn't find a recipe that seemed to have everything that I needed for the recipe that was offered, so I just decided to pick and choose and sort of make my own. So I'm going to invite you to join with me on this little experiment and we'll see how it goes. So come on in and join me as we make up Laura's granola. It's just so expensive though. You buy that box and when you open it up, it seems like it's all settled to the bottom of the bag and you've paid so much for it and the box seems to be about half full. And there's just a few of those yummy little clusters that are so delicious. Sometimes I feel like all that's left are the granola crumbs. Maybe that's because I'm the one that's pulled out all the clusters. But anyway, I'm hoping that by making my own, all of my granola will have those yummy little chewy clusters that everyone seems to like. I got online, tried to look for a recipe, and everybody's recipe was different, and I didn't seem to have everything that any one recipe called for. So I decided just sort of to go off script and make my own. So this is me kind of playing it by ear, inviting you to come along. We're gonna just be brave and have a little fun today. So I am going to go ahead and first of all, preheat my oven to 350. Get that going. And we're gonna go ahead and have a bowl for our dry ingredients, and then I'm gonna use my big mixing bowl for the liquid ingredients. I have everything already measured out to make it very easy for us. Have my little cheat sheet here because I'm sort of mixing it up as we go, and I think when I get it all said and done, if it looks like I have not enough liquid, I'll put in a little more honey. If I don't have enough dry, I'll ad-lib and add a few more oats. Okay, so first up is the oats. So it calls for, or I'm making it call for, 4 cups of oats. I've already got those ready. One consistent thing about the oats that every recipe called for is it said to use old-fashioned rolled oats. Do not use the quick oats. That was one thing that was consistent on every recipe. Then I'm gonna grab just a half a cup of coconut. I've already got that measured out. Now most of the recipes called for unsweetened coconut. Some of them said that you could use sweetened coconut if you wanted. I'm using sweetened because that's what was on my pantry shelf and I didn't want to go out and buy anything new. Let me grab a wooden spoon so we can let that stirring process begin. Okay, then next up, I just looked to see what nuts I had on my pantry shelf. I didn't have all the ones that they recommended, but I'm using what I have. So these are sunflower kernels. I'm doing a half a cup of those. And then we have pepitas, which are actually pumpkin seeds. These are delicious on a salad or on top of soup. I have a pumpkin soup that I love to put those on top of, and that's a great combination. Have those left over. Then I have half a cup of pecans. Put those in, and then who doesn't love dried cranberries? I love to put these on my oatmeal, so surely it will be great in our granola as well. Have those measured out. Then sliced almonds. I'm going to go ahead and put in a whole cup of the sliced almonds. So there are those dry ingredients. Those are the main items that you're gonna really see in our granola. I'm just giving these all a good mix. Then I have 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. Some of the recipes called for just 1 teaspoon, but I love cinnamon. And it's so heart healthy and so good for you. And then 1 teaspoon of salt. It called for maybe, a couple of the recipes called for kosher salt. I just grabbed the regular old table salt. Now this is all getting mixed up. The great thing about granola is it can be used for breakfast primarily, when you put some milk over it and have it like cereal. But it can also be put in a little baggie and taken with you if you're hiking or camping or doing whatever. It can also be a little garnish. You can use granola on top of yogurt or with some fruit. It just sort of steps up a morning breakfast. Now those are primarily my dry ingredients. Now we're gonna mix in all of the liquids. So I have here 1/3 of a cup of molasses, very sticky and very delicious. Some of the recipes called for real maple syrup. I didn't have any of that, so I'm using molasses instead. This is what will give it that delicious sweetness. Granola, of course, high in fiber, lots of minerals. It does have some fat, but most of this is kind of gonna be some healthy sort of fat. Does have a little bit of sugar. I'm not really doing the running the numbers here on how healthy it is. I'm just hoping it's gonna taste delicious. This is 1/3 of a cup of honey to mix in with the molasses. So there's that. I've already measured out 1/2 cup of the canola oil. Almost everything called for some sort of oil. Some was coconut oil, some people even used grapeseed oil. I decided to use canola because that's what I have. I did have olive oil, but I didn't really see a recipe that recommended that. So more of a neutral oil is almost what everyone seemed to suggest. Okay, I also needed to grab a couple of teaspoons of vanilla. So let me get this mixed in here. Anytime a recipe calls for vanilla, I usually double it. I just love the flavor of it in my recipe. If I'm baking and it calls for vanilla, I usually double it, or if it doesn't call for vanilla, sometimes I'll put it in anyway. If I am cooking and it doesn't call for onions, sometimes I put it in anyway. So I think that vanilla is the magic ingredient when you are baking something sweet, and I often think that onion is the magic ingredient when you are cooking something savory. So there you go. So I've got all this mixed in together. The last thing is 1/2 cup of brown sugar, and so that'll give it some extra sweetness there. So I did not measure out the brown sugar. Let me just get my dry measuring cup in here, get that going, and so there is my brown sugar. So that should be pretty much everything we need. We'll mix the dry with the liquid. I really hope this turns out fabulous. And if so, I will share the recipe with all of you and you can make your own. I think granola is probably one of those recipes that's pretty forgiving. If you have walnuts you want to put in, or if you have some other sort of seed or something that you love, something on your pantry shelf, you can just use whatever you have to make it work. So I think I've got this all in here. It looks really kind of thick. It feels a little thicker than I thought it would, but we're gonna hope it works. And if I need to add a little more oil or a little more liquid, I'll do that. I'm gonna get this mixed up in here. I needed a really deep mixing bowl to do all this, and I regretted that my one mixing bowl that is clear was filled with homemade salsa, because I wanted you to be able to see it. But I'll hold it up to the camera before I put it on the baking sheet so you can take a look. I wanted you to be able to see what it looks like while I was mixing it, but I think that's probably not possible. Get all these dry ingredients mixed in. I have a feeling I might need just a little more liquid, but maybe not. I'm gonna keep mixing here and see how it goes. I think the molasses and the honey made it very, very thick. Sounds like the oven is preheated and ready for my granola, if I can get it there. That I think it might, if I can keep up the muscle work of getting it mixed, I think we're gonna be okay. It may have just worked out. There are some places that it's still kind of dry. Now, most of the recipes that I read called for spreading it out on a baking sheet or on parchment paper, so I'm definitely gonna spread some parchment paper on my cookie sheet. Some called to turn it over about once halfway through, and others called for turning it over a couple of times. But almost consistently, everybody said to bake it for about 20 to 30 minutes at 350, so I'm gonna do it for 20, set my timer, and then check it. Ladies, I think that is about the right consistency. So let me pull this over so you can see what I'm doing. I have just a jelly roll pan here, long, big baking sheet. I have parchment paper to kind of keep that from sticking. Also, it'll make a sticky mess, and that will make it easier to clean up just to pitch this later. So I'm gonna cover this with my parchment paper. Get that spread out here. Fit it into my pan to hold it down. And then let's just start dumping this. Let me move my ingredients out of the way. Maybe you can see a little bit better the texture and the consistency of the granola as I sort of dump it off here. It sure does look pretty. You can see the nuts, especially the pepitas, those toasted pumpkin seeds, have sort of a green cast to them. And the cranberries, the craisins, dried cranberries, have the little sort of maroonish reddish tint to them. And so it just looks really pretty. And of course you see the oats and sort of the golden of the honey and the molasses. So just get all this spread out in here. I'm gonna just turn my pan, my bowl upside down to make it easier instead of continuing to dip. Get all that spread out. I hope that this is so yummy that it turns out to be one of those that the family just loves and they want me to make it all the time. Granola, as I said earlier, is so very versatile. You can eat it alone or you can use it kind of as a garnish. I love to have yogurt and then spread some granola on top of it, kind of sprinkle on the top. It looks pretty. When you eat granola as cereal, you can also always put some fresh blueberries or slice some strawberries and put on top. Makes it so yummy. It's just so hearty with all the fiber and the minerals too and the healthy oils that if you're hiking, it makes a great snack to kind of carry along to kind of keep you going when you're just about ready to faint and you've got to go back up that hill that you just climbed down to get to view the river here in the Arkansas mountains. So here we go. I've got all that in there. We are going to go ahead and stick it in the oven. Here's what it looks like. I'm going to come around so it can be close on the video and you can see what it looks like before it goes into the oven. Very pretty. I'm going to stick this in the oven, set the timer for 10 minutes. We'll take a look. I'll turn it over and then turn it a couple of times at 10 minutes and 20 minutes, evaluate if it needs to come back out. And the one also consistent thing that every recipe said is that after it comes out of the oven, you cannot touch it or turn it. You need to wait. You can't mess with it right away. It's got to cool completely. So I'm going to be sure that I do that. I'll come back and let you take a look at what it looks like when it comes out of the oven, and we'll see how this experiment works out. Stay tuned. Minutes and counting. Okay, well I'm back. 10 minutes went by pretty quickly and I've taken the granola out of the oven for the first go round here. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over a little bit. It is smelling absolutely delicious in here. It smells like oatmeal cookies baking actually. So I'm going to try to carefully turn this without burning myself. It's still kind of soft. It's not getting crumbly yet like I would expect, but I think that may be how it's going to be when it's finished, and that's why they tell us we need to be sure that we leave it alone and let it dry completely. I think as long as it's still warm, it's going to have this sort of soft texture to it, almost like oatmeal would be when you're making it to have for breakfast. So still very soft, smelling delicious. Getting a little toasty, but still pretty soft. Doesn't feel like granola yet, but wow, does it ever smell wonderful. I hope that I am going to love this and that homemade granola will ruin me for store-bought granola ever again, because I think it's kind of easy to pull together. I'm gonna spread this out again. I'll stick it back in the oven for another 10 minutes. I'll turn it again and then I'll come back at the end and let you see what it looks like when it's completely finished. So stay tuned, we'll be back. Well, the granola is out of the oven. It looks perfect, a little toasty around the edges, but I think it's supposed to be. I'm gonna hold it up so you can sort of take a look. There you go. Now I am going to obey the consistent directions across all of the recipes that I sort of smudged together to create my own recipe because they all without fail said this has to dry, it has to cool rather, absolutely completely before you start breaking it up into your chunks and putting it in an airtight container. So I'm going to resist the temptation to mess with it. I'm going to obey what all of the experienced granola makers have said to me, and I'm going to choose to wait. And so while I do that, I've got a cup of coffee ready, and I'm going to grab a book. There's no better way to wait than reading a good book. This one is by Chuck Swindoll. It's about the Apostle Paul. I'm going to be teaching through Romans next year. And so I thought it would be good for this summer for me just to get familiar with Paul a little bit. Of course, studying the New Testament, following his journeys through the book of Acts. I taught through that book a couple of years ago, became familiar with Paul. But I love Chuck Swindoll's writings. I have learned so much from him, listening to his sermons online. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what I learned from Dr. Swindoll about the Apostle Paul as I get ready to teach this fall through the book of Romans that, of course, Paul wrote to the church there in Rome. So I am going to get started on this, got my coffee ready, and it will be a nice distraction from the wonderful smells that are coming from my granola. I'm sure getting immersed with all the wonderful truth that Dr. Swindoll has to share with me will take my mind off wanting to get into this before I'm supposed to. So I'll be back one more time to let you know what it looks like after it has cooled completely. So stay with me. Well, I was patient, I read my book, I drank my coffee, and now the granola has cooled down. I have to confess, after it cooled, I did sneak a little bite, and it is absolutely delicious. So the only thing that's left to do now is to take this yummy granola and break it up into pieces. Now, some people like to make it really crummy. I think I'm gonna leave mine with some little chunks because that's kind of how I like it. It suggests storing it in kind of an airtight container. So I have this little Tupperware container that I'm going to use. Some of it feels a little chewier. What's on the edge feels crumblier. Some of the videos that I watched showed people sort of just taking it all the way down to the crumb texture, but I'm gonna try to do mine so that it has a little bit more of the chunks in it that I like so much. And that way it can be picked up and sort of put in a little Ziploc bag and taken for a hike or whatever. So there you have it, folks. There's our homemade granola. I'm going to go ahead and get it stored away. I am sure you can guess what we will be having at my house for breakfast tomorrow morning. But it was pretty easy to put together. I'm looking forward to seeing what it tastes like on top of yogurt or with some fruit, and I'll probably put some blueberries on top of mine and have it with some milk for breakfast tomorrow. But thanks for joining with me on this journey to try out a new recipe. For Cross My Heart Ministry, I am Laura McFarland. I want to thank you for staying with me for this experimental version of Martha Monday. If you are a regular subscriber, thank you very much. If you're not, it's super easy. Just click the big red subscribe button. It's absolutely free, and then you'll get a notification each time we post a new video. If you like the content that we bring you, it would be a huge blessing to our ministry if you would click that thumbs up button, give us a thumbs up, leave us a note below, let us know your favorite ingredient in your granola. And then also, if you are blessed by our teaching, our ministry videos, or our Martha Monday videos, we would be so honored if you would share our channel with a friend. Thanks so much, friends. Have a blessed week.